We have learned that the death of Kent Hull, the Buffalo Bills' former center, was caused by bleeding in his digestive system, and it was probably related to liver disease. News 4's Dr. Peter Rostro is here to tell us how that might have happened.
How does liver disease threaten a person's life? One way is by interfering with the normal flow of blood. The stomach and intestines send blood to the liver, where it extracts nutrients.
The normal liver is soft and very flexible and very pliable, just like you would want if you were going to be pumping a lot of blood through that organ.
But many diseases cause scarring in the liver. It becomes firm and makes blood flow difficult.
So blood that normally would flow easily through here meets an obstruction and has to divert around, and it develops dilated veins in some of these unusual spots where they have a propensity to bleed.
Those dilated veins in the esophagus are called varices. They're sort of like varicose veins that some people have in their legs. We can see them by looking in the esophagus with an endoscope. Here you can see them as little bulging red lines. Dr. Mall is a specialist in liver and intestinal disease and chief of medicine at the VA. He checks liver patients regularly to try to prevent bleeding.
We like to look down with an endoscope every few years to see if they've developed these dilated veins. If we find them and they're small, we usually start medication, and that helps prevent them from getting larger and from bleeding.
If they do bleed, which is apparently what happened to Kent Hull, it can be a disaster.
Bleeding can be substantial and is generally an emergency that brings people into the emergency room. It's not subtle.
Sometimes large varices can be closed to prevent them from bleeding, and if they bleed, sometimes a person gets to an emergency room soon enough to be rescued. But it doesn't take long to lose a critical amount of blood.
Oh, it's terrible. And we have heard that he apparently needed a liver transplant.
Right.
Would that have worked well for him, you think, given this condition?
Liver transplants work very well, and they have far fewer problems with rejection than kidney transplants or heart transplants. And people can live a long time after a liver transplant. The problem is we don't have enough livers, and so many people die while they're waiting for a transplant.
Oh boy, terrible. The whole thing sounds terrible. Thank you so much, Doctor.